Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys That Magic. You are joined with your host for today, Steven. I got David with me. We are going to be doing his $100 upgrade of the Ruinous Powers Precon deck. David, talk to me a little bit about the deck. Talk to me about the Face Commander. If you decided to stick with the Face Commander, what do we got going on?
All right, so this deck, first off, I got to go ahead and say I'm not familiar with Warhammer 40K, but just this deck as a whole, I think is super cool, just straight out of the box. It almost feels bad in a way for me to be upgrading this because it means I got to be switching cards in and out, and like I'm losing a little bit of the theme and the motif here. However, the bright side of this deck is that this deck's theme is all about chaos. And you can really tell from like a deck building standpoint that they're all about chaos here because the deck has themes of Cascade and Demon Tribal, and it has themes of like really wanting to kill like a ton of creatures, and forgetting to include cards that kill a ton of creatures. And then we have like a thing where we lose a lot of life, and I don't really know the payoff for that. And then this deck also costs like 1,000,000 mana, and we forgot to include any like of the good mana rocks in the precon. So a lot of this is actually going to be fixing this deck to make it function a little bit better. Now, with that being said, that's not to say that I don't like the deck. I know that I just kind of spoke some negatives here. I think that the legendary creatures that could potentially helm this deck are two of the coolest that I have seen out of any pre-constructed deck. But this really feels like they took four different decks together and they just kind of mashed them. And the big overlap that they happen to have is just that they're the same colors. This deck
Hey,
is all over the place.
David, I'd like to say that you did one of my favorite things that you do, and that is you gave it a compliment and then you insulted it. And it's probably like my favorite thing in the entire world.
Look, it's the Oreo technique, right? Or the sandwich technique. You start with the good, then you mention the shitty part, and then you try to end with the good.
I mean, it is, you do it so well. I must say it is probably my favorite trait of yours. But going with that chaos, what did we do commander wise?
So the face card of this deck is Abaddon the Despoiler, which I think is a really cool card. And I do definitely want to talk about him, just not actually for the $100 video. He's going to be helming the 300. So I like both of these legendary creatures so much, I decided to do one for the 100 and then one for the 300. So they're going to have a very different flavor to them, a different overall theme. But with that being said, for the purposes of this video, we chose the secondary commander in here, which is Be'lakor the Dark Master. He is 3, a blue, a black, and a red for a legendary creature, Demon Noble. That's right, this guy's royalty. He's a 6/5 with flying, and it's got two abilities. The first one is Prince of Chaos. It says whenever he enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of demons you control. He also has Lord of Torment, which says whenever another demon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So
That's
really,
terrifying.
yeah, really love these abilities. Not only does he help to draw you a ton of cards, but he also then just kind of beats the shit out of your opponent because demons, for the most part, are really, really big. So whenever they're going to be dropping, they're going to be smacking things for 5, 6, or potentially even more damage.
It's like a built-in war storm surge.
Absolutely.
So speaking of war storm surge and chaos and big demons, what are we doing here, man?
Oh, we're throwing big demons into the deck. So we definitely wanted to kind of go down the road of just demon tribal. So I picked some of the ones that I thought were really interesting that wanted to just kind of fit into this color scheme. At the same time, I did kind of want to keep a little bit of the chaos factor going. So I did try to choose demons that kind of feed into that as well. The first demon that I wanted to throw in here is Rakdos the Showstopper. This is 4, a black, and a red. It's a total of 6 mana. It's a legendary creature demon, a 6/6 with flying and trample. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, flip a coin for each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp. Destroy each creature whose coin comes up tails. So he's a big board wipe that doesn't really affect us and still has that chaos factor.
I hate this card so much.
Yeah, the best part about this too is if our commander's in play, we just smack something for 6 on top of it.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times that, for some odd reason, every time this card shows up on the board, all my shit always comes up tails, and I hate it.
Well, if you hate this one, you're probably going to hate the next one even more. We're going to be throwing the OG Rakdos in here. That's Rakdos the Defiler. He is 2 black and 2 red for a total of 6 mana. It's a legendary creature demon. This one's even bigger. He's a 7/6. He's got flying and trample, and it says whenever he attacks, sacrifice half the non-demon permanents you control rounded up. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player sacrifices half the non-demon permanents he or she controls rounded up. So, not necessarily a board wipe, because this guy hits so much more than just creatures, but he doesn't count our demons, so our demons kind of escape this clause. If we have a bunch of lands and we have a bunch of demons, we're only going to be potentially sacrificing, well, our non-demon permanents, which is great.
David, we're 2 cards in, and I'm terrified already.
I mean, if you haven't gotten it yet, the theme is just kind of like kill a lot of shit, play big smashy things.
Yeah, I mean, do you like the stuff on your board? I'm sorry.
I mean, look, Rakdos the Defiler also gets rid of some of the things on my board too, and after a certain point, just nobody has lands.
Oh, and it smacks you for 7.
Yeah, it's dope. We're also going to throw Baylor in here. This is a demon that costs 3 and 2 red for a total of 5. It's a 5/5 with flying. It says whenever it attacks or dies, choose one or more. Each mode must target a different player. The first mode says target opponent draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. The second mode says target opponent sacrifices a non-token artifact. And then the third mode says Baylor deals damage to target opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand.
This is so chaotic.
Yeah, we're keeping with the chaos theme. I'm here for it.
I mean, discard 3 cards at random?
Look, it's a burning inquiry, so if you have a sizable enough hand, you can always draw 3 and then really pray that you're not discarding the best 3 cards in your hand. If you do have an opponent who maybe just tutored for something, that's a great mode to throw at them, because the chances are, I mean, they might just discard what they tutored for.
Yeah, it's a more aggressive gamble for somebody. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, big fan of him.
Well, I like where this is going so far. The direction is insane. Please continue. Take me down this chaotic road.
So this next group card's sadly a little bit less chaotic. Still 100% on the demon theme, though. This one, the first one here is going to be Bloodgift Demon. This is 3 and 2 black for a creature demon. It's a 5/4 with flying, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, target player, that's us always, draws a card and loses 1 life.
Not shocked that you do this to yourself.
No, absolutely, dude. If you're playing a demon deck, you got to be a little masochistic, right?
100%.
Next up here, we have Archfiend of Depravity. This one is 3 and 2 black. It's a 5/4 creature demon with flying. It says at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures he or she controls, then sacrifices the rest. We can't let them play with things.
I hate you.
And then lastly, we have a little itty bitty little demon here. This one is Dream Devourer. It is 1 and a black. It's a creature demon cleric. It's a 0/3 and says each non-land card in your hand without foretell has foretell. Its foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. It says whenever you foretell a card, Dream Devourer gets +2/+0 until end of turn. A lot of demons, as it turns out, are pretty expensive, so he helps us to be able to get them out for a little bit cheaper.
I mean, I like it. Plus, it kind of, in my mind, is a little chaotic because you're like, oh my god, what did he foretell over there?
Ah, so not chaos for me, but chaos for you. Instill the panic.
Panic instilled. Continue on, my friend. What else we got?
All right, so I'm going to be throwing 2 other demons into this deck. The first one here is Harvester of Souls. This is 4 and 2 black. It's a 5/5. It's got Death Touch and says whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. Super important to note here, that doesn't say that you have to control the creature. So if you drop this and then say, for example, I don't know, use your commander's ability to then smack something in the face for 5 damage, and it dies, you'll draw a card, which is great.
Synergy.
And then lastly here, we're going to include Cardor Doomscourge. He is 2, a black and a red. He's a legendary creature, Demon Berserker. It's a 4/3, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able, and attack a player other than you if able. He also says whenever an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
Why do I see a common thread with this Harvester of Souls in this card?
I mean, the entire deck essentially is just kind of padded with removal. the way that the commander works for this deck is just like you're going to constantly be hitting things over and over again. And I know that I'm not necessarily including a ton of demons here, but one of the really cool things about this deck is that a ton of the creatures that were already included in the Precon are demons themselves. And what makes it even better is a lot of them are actually demons that are really cheap and make your other demons do better things too.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Looks like we have one last creature.
So one last creature that's going to end up making the inclusion here. Sadly, not a demon, but I did think that he was really important. We're going to be casting a ton of really expensive things, and we are in a Grixis deck, so I am throwing in Nightscape Familiar. This is 1 and a black for a creature zombie. It's a 1/1 that says blue spells and red spells we cast cost 1 less to cast, and then we can pay 1 and a black to regenerate him in the case that he dies.
Always a solid choice, my friend. All right. I love the creature package you put in here. Now, I know you put some spells in. What kind of spells are we looking at?
So we're going to be adding 2 sorceries here to this list. The first one is going to be Jeska's Will. This is 2 and a red for a sorcery. It says, choose one. If you control your commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. The first mode on this says you can add a red mana for each card in target opponent's hand. And the second one says, exile the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. I thought that this was really important that we have a ritual style effect in the deck because a lot of our creatures tend to be on the more expensive side, so we need to be able to get them out as quickly as possible.
Oh, this card is solid, man. That's probably one of my favorite cards in Magic.
And then feeding into the demon theme, we're going to be, of course, including Kindred Dominance. This is 5 and 2 black. It's a total of 7 mana. It's a sorcery. It says choose a creature type. You'll be surprised at what we pick. Destroy all creatures that aren't of the chosen type.
Dinosaurs?
Exactly. No, demons, of course. And then I love the artwork on this card because it even foreshadows it. They're demons coming down, like collecting all those souls.
Yeah, it's hysterical. It's like, guess what I'm going to pick?
We'll definitely keep them guessing.
Yes, this is true. Well, David, I like these sorceries. Any instances?
No instances.
Well, surely artifacts.
Oh, of course. As far as the artifacts go, the first one that we're going to talk about here is Vanquisher's Banner. This is 5 colorless. It's an artifact that says whenever it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, and whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card.
Dinosaurs.
Once again, yes, absolutely dinosaurs.
Well, fantastic. I like that we keep the dino theme going here. Well, you did tell me earlier that this deck is pretty mana intensive. Did you add any artifacts to fix that?
I did. So whenever they created these 40k decks, they went off and they made a super cool alternative artwork, Arcane Signet, and they forgot to include it in this deck. And I can't really understand why. In the 3 color list, they chose not to include it, so we're going to put it back in.
Well done.
All right. We're also going to add in Felwar Stone for 2 mana. We get an artifact that says tap it to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. We're 3 colors. Chances are our opponents are going to have at least one of the colors, if not 2, that we need for our deck. And then lastly here, we're going to throw in Rakdos Signet. This is 2 mana for an artifact. We can pay 1, tap it, and add both a black and a red to our mana pool. Now, not a mana rock in and of itself, but it also does have to make our things a little bit cheaper here. We're going to be throwing in Herald's Horn. This is 3 mana. It says whenever it enters battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature spells of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. And at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it into your hand.
Dinosaurs.
Yes.
Well, David, with all those dinosaurs in this deck, surely you added lands.
I did. The mana base in this deck, I've got to say, is just as chaotic in theme as just about everything else. And I was not super ecstatic on it. I really did try to make this mana base just a little bit better with the remaining funds that I had for it. And to be completely honest with you, if you are going to upgrade this $100 list past this point, this mana base probably needs to be the first thing that you target. So I am going to be throwing in Dragon Skull Summit. It says it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control either a swamp or a mountain, and it can tap for either a black or a red. Drowned Catacomb is another one of the check lands. It says it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. You can tap it to add either a blue or a black. We're going to be adding in the Pathway here. This is Blightstep Pathway. You can have it enter on its front side to tap for a black or on the back side to tap for a red. Sulphurous Springs is a pain land that we're going to be throwing in here. You can tap it to add a colorless, or you can tap it to add either a black or a red. If you do, it'll deal 1 damage to you, though. And then lastly, because, well, let's face it, I have a feeling I'm probably going to be playing this deck up against some graveyard synergies. We're going to be throwing in Bajuka Bog. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, it does so tapped. And then you'll also exile target player's graveyard. Later on, it'll tap for a black.
What? Graveyard decks? What? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I am playing a very graveyard theme heavy deck, and I cannot wait for the Precon battle for this one.
I am a little scared.
Speaking of being scared, I hate when we have to do this, but in order to make room for all these cool cards, David, we did have to possibly get rid of some of them.
We did. We did have to get rid of some of them. A lot of the cards that we got rid of, I was not actually super high on, though. The first card that we're going to be cutting here is Blood for the Blood God. It is 8, 2 black, and 1 red for a total of 4 million mana. It's an instant, and it says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature that died this turn. It says discard your hand, then draw 8 cards. Blood for the Blood God deals 8 damage to each opponent, and you exile Blood for the Blood God. I am not here to include a card that is only good under super situational circumstances that I am never going to be able to hardcast otherwise.
Yeah, this card is interesting because like it's almost like I'm not even gonna put this in the same realm as Blasphemous Act. Never mind.
It's not. They do very different things. I mean, yes, it can get cheaper. At a very cheapest can cost only 3, which I guess is really cool. I mean, it draws you a ton of cards, and hitting 8 damage to each opponent is a solid number. I just don't think that's going to really do a whole lot for you. It's probably not going to be winning you the game. 8 damage in the grand scheme of things is like not the biggest amount. And the fact that this is going to be a dead card in your hand 95% of the time thinks that I just thought that this was the first card that needed to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you with the fact that you could have your commander out for 6 rather than 8, and then each demon you play is basically going to deal a shit ton of damage to whatever you want, anyways.
Yeah, similarly here, for the same kind of reason, I'm also going to get rid of Decree of Pain. This is 6 and 2 black for a total of 8. It's a sorcery and says, destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated, and you do draw a card for each creature destroyed this way. It's got a cycling ability on it as well, where you can cycle it away for 3 and 2 black, and it says whenever you do, each creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Still not really a big fan of this card. I feel like for the most part, I don't actually want to cycle this thing away, because -2/-2 is probably not going to kill shit. And at 8 mana, even though, yes, it is a board wipe with a huge upside on it, it's still a super expensive board wipe. We have a lot of creature removal just built in with our commander.
No, I think it was a good choice. I like this. I also agree with you about the cycling ability. -2/-2 doesn't really help out too much.
Let the Galaxy Burn is another card that didn't quite make the cut here. It is X5 and a red, so a minimum of 6 mana. It's a sorcery. It has Cascade, and then it says, let the Galaxy Burn deals X plus 2 damage to each creature that didn't enter the battlefield this turn. This is a sorcery, which means that you're probably not going to be able to take advantage of that second clause there, the enter the battlefield this turn thing. Because that would make the assumption that you had even more mana to begin with that you played creatures with. And this already costing 6, and so many of our creatures in this deck costing 5 or more mana, you're just never really going to be able to get that added benefit there. The other thing here being, too, is this is a really cool card with Cascade. It is entirely possible that you cascade into a 1 mana spell, and I don't want to be paying 1 million mana for this kind of an effect.
You don't want to pay 6 mana for a Soul Ring?
I don't want to pay a minimum of 6 mana to deal 2 damage and get a Soul Ring now.
I mean, I think this is insane because what was the mana curve for this deck like?
So straight out of the box, one of my biggest gripes with this deck is that this deck literally doesn't do anything until you have, I would say, 5 mana at minimum, and it's very light on ramp and mana rocks. So you're probably going to sit around and watch your opponents play until like turn 6 at a minimum.
I mean, the first 3 cards that you've removed cost 11, 8, and 6 mana.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Okay.
It's okay. We're not done with the incredibly expensive stuff either.
Oh, keep going, David.
So next up, we're going to move on from the instants and sorceries. We're going to start cutting some of the creatures here. There is one of the creature types in this deck. It's the Astartes. I hope I'm saying that right. Astartes. Somebody roast me down in the comments, please. Teach me how to read. The first one here is going to be Lucius the Eternal. He's 3 a black and a red. It's a legendary creature. He's an Astartes warrior. He's got haste. He's a 5/3. He's got a super cool named ability. It's Armor of Shrieking Souls. He says whenever he dies, exile it and choose target creature and opponent controls. When that creature leaves the battlefield, you return Lucius the Eternal from exile to the battlefield under its owner's control. Now, that sounds really cool, but ultimately this is a 5-drop that's just a 5/3. It does have haste on it, which is nice, but it's got a really weird recursion ability that I'm not really here to take advantage of. Next up, Karn the Betrayer. This is 3 in a red for a legendary creature, also an Astartes Berserker. This one is a 5/1. Its first ability is Berserker. It says it attacks or blocks each combat if able. It has Sigil of Corruption that says whenever you lose control of Karn the Betrayer, draw 2 cards. It's got a third ability on it that says the Betrayer, meaning that if damage would be dealt to Karn the Betrayer, prevent that damage, and an opponent of your choice gains control of it. You don't actually have to get this back. You're going to give this to an opponent whenever this thing would attack or block, because I'm assuming it's going to take combat damage. Sure, you can draw 2 cards off of it, but past that point, I mean, your opponents can just ping pong this back and forth between themselves and then just use this as a card draw engine, and I am not wanting to feed my opponents.
This is insanely crazy of a card, I'm not gonna lie to you when you think about it. They really could use this against you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like this is a really weird politicking card that if I am in a position that I'm doing well, is gonna bury me. Next up here we have Hellbrute. This is 3 a black and a red for an artifact creature, Astartes Dreadnought. It's a 5/4. It has haste. It's also got Sarcophagus, an ability that says you may cast Hellbrute from your graveyard by exiling another creature card from your graveyard in addition to paying its other costs. So it's kind of got like a weird escape clause on it. And that's all that it does. My favorite thing here is the fact that it says just kill me in the flavor text. Lastly, here we have Knight Rampager. This is 4 and a red for a total of 5. It's an artifact creature knight. It's a 6/5 with trample. And the first ability on it says Frenzied Rampage. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose an opponent at random. Knight Rampager attacks that player this combat if able. The second ability on it says that whenever Knight Rampager dies, it deals 4 damage to target opponent chosen at random. This is a 5 mana 6/5 that is not going to attack the player you always want to attack, and is not even going to deal damage to the player you always want to deal damage to. This is just a wrecking ball you have no control over.
I mean, in a deck full of chaos, I understand why they put this here, but at the same time, I want a little control.
I can already see it. Like, this is how I'm going to politic and say, like, hey, Steven, don't attack me. And I'll do this one thing and we'll be friends. And then I'll play like a Knight Rampager and I'll just beat the shit out of Steven on accident.
Yeah, and I'll be like, what the hell, David? You said you weren't going to attack me. Now I'm going to kill you.
Exactly. Friends kill friends over this card.
Friends kill friends. All right, David. Creatures you removed. I like creatures you removed. What kind of artifacts did you get rid of out of this deck?
So we are going to be removing 2 artifacts from this deck. The first one is Assault Suit. This is an old reprint that, like, I understand why it made it into the deck, and I think thematically it's also pretty cool because, like, most of our creatures in here, any of the humans are Astartes, at least they have like the big battle suits on them, which is cool. This card is 4 mana for an artifact equipment. It says the equipped creature gets +2/+2, has haste, can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, and can't be sacrificed. That's all dope. Past that point, though, it says that at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of the equipped creature until end of turn. If you do, untap it, and it's got an equip cost of 3. This basically gives their opponents one of our creatures that we're just going to be able to start using as a wrecking ball on other people's combats because they're going to just start attacking in with it. I mean, it's cool. I'm just not necessarily here for this avenue of things. If I really wanted to focus in on that, like, do random combat-esque theme in the deck, then sure, I can totally see why this makes the cut, but we're here to play with demons, and demons don't wear suits. And then the second equipment here is Draknien. It is 4, a black and a red for a total of 6 mana. It's a legendary artifact equipment. The first ability on it is Echo of the First Murder. It says, whenever Dracnian enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature. It's got Demon Sword. It says, equipped creature has menace and gets +X/+O, where X is the exiled creature's power. And it has an equip cost of 2. I actually love all of the abilities on this card. It's just the fact that it's another 6-drop, and I definitely need to lower the curve at least a little bit of this deck to kind of make it functional. So I like that it's removal. I like that it pumps the shit out of your stuff. And it's also a pretty cheap equip cost. Just not here for it.
Hey, I agree with you. After looking at the cards you've added and removed, the mana curve of this deck is nuts.
It's not a mana curve. It's just a mountain that we climb.
It's just a mountain. All right, I like the artifacts we took out. I think they make sense. What instances did you get out of here?
So the first one here is going to be Nurgle's Conscription. This is 4 and a black for an instant. It says put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield tapped into your control, then exile that player's graveyard. It's a nice little graveyard removal piece. I'm just not here for 5 mana. And the deck does have like a slight recursion theme where it's like I'm trying to steal things from my opponent's graveyards. Didn't really want to feed into that one either. Chaos Mutation is 3, a blue, and a red for an instant. It says exile any number of target creatures controlled by different players. For each creature exiled this way, its controller reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. Put that creature onto the battlefield, then put the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. This is essentially like a 5 mana Chaos Warp, but it guarantees they hit every time. I do not want to do this.
This is interesting.
I mean, yeah, you can use this as like a weird ass polymorph effect to be able to make sure that you're also kind of like pseudo upgrading your creatures. But for 5 mana, it's really weird. There's a huge whiff potential here. I just don't want to do this.
Yeah, I think the deck's chaotic enough.
And then another one of the instances we're going to be cutting here is Kill, Maim, Burn. This is 3, a black and a red. It's an instant. It says choose one or more. Destroy target artifact, destroy target creature, or kill, maim, burn. Deals 3 damage to target player. For 5 mana, I don't think this card does a whole lot.
This card is awful.
It's I mean, I like what the card does. I think that this could have probably been totally fine at like, God, I don't know. I'm just not here for 5 mana. It's so expensive again.
No, I agree. I mean, it's got upside, but like I feel like in almost every deck, it gets to the point where like you have cooler things you can do with 5 mana.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like there's other cards that you could probably just be throwing into this deck that, like, I don't know, cost 3 mana that are probably going to function the exact same as this 80-90% of the time.
Exactly.
The last couple of cards that we're going to be cutting from here, just to make sure that we round things out. The first one is Past in Flames. This is 3 and a red for a sorcery. It says each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. This card itself also happens to have flashback for 4 and a red, so it allows us to be able to capture instants and sorceries a second time from our graveyard, which is definitely a really cool ability. The problem here, however, being is this is not a spell slinger deck, and most of the instants and sorceries you're going to be putting in our graveyard are really fucking expensive. So Past in Flames isn't super helpful. Reverberate is also going to get the cut here. This is 2 red mana for an instant. It says copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Reverberate, I will argue, probably one of the cards that is like very borderline on getting removed from this, because I love the way that you can like interact with your opponents with Reverberate. The problem here, once again, is that we're probably not going to be copying a whole lot of our own things just because this deck is so expensive. And I did need to make a little bit room to add up our creature count with those demons. We're going to be cutting a single enchantment for this deck. It is Nurgle's Rot. It's an enchantment aura. It says enchant creature an opponent controls. And whenever the enchanted creature dies, return Nurgle's Rot to its owner's hand, and you create a 1/3 black demon creature token named Plague Bearer of Nurgle. So a token producer sometimes.
All right, David. Spells you removed, artifacts removed, creatures. I think my eyes might be a little blurry. Did you get rid of one of the best lands in Magic?
If by one of the best lands in Magic you mean one of the worst ones out there in a total trap card, yes, I did.
Oh, David, let's talk about your land removals.
So the first card, and the one I think you're alluding to here, is I did cut down on one island.
Oh, bingo.
No, that's not going to be the card that he's talking about. Although I do remove an island from this. That's just kind of make room for some of our other lands that we included earlier, some of the ones that we'd be able to tap for more than just one color. The card he's talking about, though, is Temple of the False God. This is a land that you can tap to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. You can only do this, though, if you control 5 or more lands, which means Temple of the False God is completely dead for you for the first 4 turns at minimum of the game. This is not a good card. This needs to be removed from any precon pretty much as soon as you see it. A basic land is going to be better than this card almost always.
All right, David, you convinced me.
Molten Slag Heap is another card that I think is just absolutely awful and made me, I don't know, I cried a little bit whenever I saw this in the list. You can tap it to add a colorless mana to your mana pool, which is totally fine, except for the fact that we're 3 fucking colors. You can pay mana to tap it and put a storage counter on it, or you can pay 1, remove X storage counters from Molten Slag Heap, then add X mana in any combination of black or red to your mana pool. So this is a land that you have to pay mana to make mana later. This is awful.
I didn't think that there was such a card. I'm not gonna lie to you, dude. This is why.
I mean, like, look, if we're playing proliferate decks or something, then maybe you could argue why these kinds of cards need to be included, but I do not want to pay mana to make my lands work.
No, this is just awful.
Swiftwater Cliffs is a super cool tapped land, and I hate tapped lands. It says it enters the battlefield tapped, and whenever it does, you gain 1 life. It can tap for a blue or a red, but definitely not the turn you play it. And then lastly here, we're going to be cutting Forgotten Cave. It says it enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for a red, or in the case that you don't need lands, which I don't know in a deck like this you'll ever not need lands, you can cycle it away for a red mana.
I think your hate for tap lands and my hate for tap lands are very equal, sir.
Oh yeah, I would honestly be running. I would rather be running basics than than tapped lands.
I completely agree. I got kind of lucky with my deck. It's all black, so it's just easy.
Wow.
Well, David, I gotta say, the chaos that your deck is going to ensue on all of us is going to be insane, and I cannot wait to see this deck perform. But I just have one question for you.
What is that one question?
We gave you $100 for this upgrade. Out of that $100, how much did you spend?
I spent $97.50 as of the time of this recording.
Man, you got change back.
I did. You could almost buy sleeves for this deck.
What kind of sleeves you getting?
Oh, definitely the cheapies. Like, I don't even know if they make them anymore. Like, there's got to be something that's lower quality than like Ultra Pros, right?
100%, sir. Maybe.
Penny sleeves. Go with the penny sleeves.
Penny sleeves. I like it. All right, David, any final thoughts, any comments, questions, concerns you have about this deck?
Yeah, sure. Generally speaking, I actually do think that this deck is quite a bit of fun, just kind of playtesting it and goldfishing it. I mean, Demon Tribal, what's not to like about that? This deck also, obviously, we did make upgrades for it, but the shell of it is still 100% there. There's still a ton of Cascade. There's still a ton of just chaos and absolute shenanigans in the precon, so definitely really like it. It's a ton of fun. This is a deck that's probably going to play a little bit differently every time that you play it, just because sometimes you just don't know what you're actually casting.
All right, guys, and that is going to wrap up this video. I'd like to thank David for taking us on a beautiful journey of this $100 upgrade for the Ruinous Powers. Stay tuned because we do have a bunch more videos coming up of everyone else's $100 upgrade for the 40K precons. We also have the $300 upgrades, and not to mention the finale, which will be the precon upgrade battle of both the 100 and 300. I cannot wait to duke it out with the boys. Do not forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. It is at Guys That Magic. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, so that way you're always notified when we post some super amazing videos. And then my favorite part of the video, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let us know what David could have done to make the deck a little bit better within the restrictions of the $100. Let us know what you think David did great. Just let us know your thoughts. We like to hear them. We read everything. We like to comment on them too. But with that, guys, I'd like to say thank you for staying. Thank you for watching. And as always, Have a good night.
Later.
Or day. Or afternoon. It depends on when you're watching.